man from Maine who helped shape the world of comics art has died. Mort Todd was raised in Yarmouth but spent most of his professional life living in New York City before moving back to Maine.
In that time, he drew constantly and rose to leadership roles in some major comic book publishing houses. Just 4 years ago, Rob Caldwell sat down with Mort at his studio in Portland.
When Mort Todd was growing up in Yarmouth, it wasn't hard to figure out what he'd be doing in his spare time. Usually, he was engrossed in a comic book.
I got into like horror comics, crime comics, romance, Christian comics, everything. I would just read everything.
Just devoured it all.
Yep.
When did you actually start doing your own drawing and writing?
About the same time.
He was lucky as a kid because his grandfather had a print shop in town.
So there was tons of paper, so I could take home reams of paper and just like draw constantly.
At the age of 12, he was working as a junior counselor at Camp Wawanock in Brunswick and actually getting paid to put out the camp's weekly newspaper.
Would draw the covers and, write all the content and doodle and everything. And then during the off months, when they didn't have camp, I was like, you don't really need that printing machine, do you? In between. So I took it home and I'd print my own comics and stuff.
Before he got out of high school, he knew writing and illustrating stories was what he wanted to do. Todd moved to New York City at 17, started getting work, sold his first screenplay at 18, and eventually became the editor of the satirical humor magazine Cracked, which was selling hundreds of thousands of copies a month. Mort Todd was 23 years old.
Was it awkward at times to deal with these established writers and illustrators when you were 23 years old and the editor calling the shots?
No, the only people that were concerned were people that didn't have confidence in their own work.
About 10 years ago, realizing he could work from anywhere, Todd left New York and moved back to Maine.
Whether it's animation or drawing, I still like to do the original pen and ink on paper and then do all the finishes on the computer.
At his studio in Portland, the creations come to life.
You need to know what you want before you do your finishes on it.
He has worked on so many projects.
Oh, this is another poster I did with the Portland Lighthouse with some visitors.
Animation, advertising, newspaper illustrations, band posters, music videos, record covers, even MTV and Sesame Street. And the stories about them come tumbling out.
This is another weird project I got. This is a documentary that I produced about 10 years ago. And what it is, it's based on these books I've been putting out, which are photo comics. And they're Italian from the 1960s.
When drawing, he likes to listen to music, usually movie soundtracks.
Then you can draw with some flourish, like red arm.
The freewheeling imagination of a child never got snuffed out in Mort Todd. He's still doing what he'd loved to do as a kid decades ago: writing, drawing, making up stories.
How would you describe your artistic sensibility?
Nutty. I don't know. It's like I've always been into the weird stuff. So, the humor and horror.
Incredible career right there. Mort Todd, by the way, was 63 years old.